Good to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello, folks. My name is Omar Broderick, and welcome to Mastershot. We have esteemed guest Jenna MacMillan here today. Jenna MacMillan is a P.E.I. director-producer with more than a few credits to her name. As a producer, she's helped get many productions off the ground, such as the feature film A Small Fortune and the web series Wharf Rats. She's also worked in production management on projects like CBC Netflix series Anne with an E. And then on the directing side, she's known for telling stories that resonate, such as her short films Not My Brother and Sunnyside. She's currently has a feature film in pre-production, which, if we're lucky, we'll get to learn a little bit more about today. Jenna is also a co-founder of 63 Lights, a newly formed P.E.I. production company, and was recently awarded a FilmPEI lifetime membership for her commitment to supporting the island's film industry and its emerging filmmakers. Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you for taking some time on your busy day to sit with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So we'll get right into it. Jenna, what got you into filmmaking?
Growing up on PEI, I was involved with film as an actor. My first acting role was as Anne Shirley, shocking, when I was 8 years old, and David Moses, who ran the film production company Moses Media, was looking for a young girl to play Anne for a segment of Good Morning America, where they were highlighting Canada. It was called The World Next Door, and each province, they highlighted something that, made each of those provinces famous, and of course, Anne made P.E.I. famous. So that was my first little touch of the film industry.
Okay.
And so after that, I was hooked. I started doing theater. I was involved in a few local television shows. I was on Emily of New Moon when I was really young. And I just totally had the bug. And then when I graduated from school, I applied to go to theater school, and I didn't get in. I was waitlisted. And that kind of changed everything for me because I didn't know what else I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Concordia University and took psychology. My parents are both social workers, so I was always interested in the human condition, and I think that's why I loved movies and I loved acting, because I could inhabit someone else. And in first year, I took an intro to film class. I was like, this sounds fun. It's 3 hours. We watch a bunch of movies. And I ended up dropping all of my classes except for my film class. So I was like, well, that might mean something. And I ended up going back to David Moses and saying, do you think I would have a shot in film? And he was like, there's only one way to find out. And he helped me put together my film school application. I applied to Ryerson. It was a long shot, and I ended up getting in to Ryerson Film School.
Awesome.
And as soon as I got there, I realized, this is how I want to be part of the storytelling process. I still have love for actors. I think it's incredible what they do. But for me, being part of the storytelling from the other side of the camera and, from genesis to completion, that's what really turned my crank, and I realized that right away.
Thank you for sharing that, Jenna.
Yeah.
Seems like you have a pretty eclectic background, and I can't seem to wonder why you'd be a good fit for Anthony. You have the look. As a director, what are some of the stories that you're drawn toward telling?
I think for me, the thread has been to. I'm trying to find a way to say this that it's not cliche, but I'm really attracted to underrepresented voices. I've been drawn to underdog stories. I think I just like to tell stories about people that might not normally be in the spotlight, and to give a different perspective. I think I'm really drawn to stories about social justice, mental health awareness. That's been a lot of my work to date. But really, I'm drawn to interesting people. I'm drawn to what makes people do the things that they do, and the impact that people's experiences can have on their day-to-day lives. I'm interested in a good story.
Awesome. And those topics resonate very well today, and everyone's lives are affected by multiple things. So it's nice that a director is so focused on telling everyone's story, not just their own.
Yeah, for sure.
Your 2 short films were mentioned, and they tackle some heavier themes. Can you give us a little bit of some insight on what some of the tools or tricks you would have used to tell those kind of stories?
Yeah. Both of them, both Not My Brother and Sunnyside, were rooted in my experience growing up with my parents as social workers. My father worked in adolescent care for mostly his whole life, and then he worked at the Richmond Center, so he was providing mental health care to the community. And my mom, she started the Child and Youth Care Worker program at Holland College, and they both had private practices and both spent a lot of time with youth. So I don't know, both of those stories, I think, came from a really real place for me. And in both of those stories, the lead characters are not being heard. Their voices aren't being heard. And both of those stories, they're looking for advocacy. They're looking for someone to come alongside them and help them. And yeah, I think that's the root of both of those films. It was they were both really cathartic stories for me. And Not My Brother actually had a short life in the health P.E.I. circuit. It was used as a tool for education and for representation, for people having struggles with mental health and getting the support that they need. And, you know, at the end of the day, like that's the most successful life that film could have had. So, yeah.
It's a very it's a very positive thing that you can speak for those voices and give them air, and give them a much bigger platform than some of those people would be able to do for themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, and since making both of those films, I'll say that the conversation and the stigma around talking about mental health has greatly reduced. And I think even right now, the issue around access to mental health care and how you can be on a waiting list for over a year to get help. I think the doors have been blown open on that conversation, and it's just something that we as a community aren't putting up with as much, and we're talking about it, and those issues aren't being, I mean, in some cases I'm sure they still are, but it doesn't feel as much like people are suffering in silence as much anymore. So it is nice that we can start telling different stories and start tackling other issues. But at the time that I was making both of those films, it was a real problem, and I just felt like, that I had to talk about it.
Thank you. It seems like these topics are really close to home, and I wonder, do you feel like media arts or arts in general is a great way for people to express themselves as opposed to, the more traditional way talking to somebody? Is that possibly a safer way to kind of get those things off, per se, one's chest?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, for me, choosing a direction in my life, it's often been like, should I do frontline work like my parents, or should I tell stories? Yeah. And that, like, even as early as like 2 years ago, I was thinking about packing it all in, going back to school, and going into psychology or doing something that I felt like could really make a difference. Okay. But when I think about times where I've had breakthroughs, or I've had to recognize something, it's been through a podcast, it's been through film, it's been through television. I think there's a power in seeing something outside of yourself, recognizing things that you might be dealing with, and naming it and saying, oh, that's what it looked like, and then being like, that alone could be the catalyst to go and talk to somebody and get some help. So I think both should exist. I think that there's power, obviously, in using your own voice and talking about the thing and trying to work with a professional to get some closure and to get some healing. But I think sometimes the first step can be seeing it in someone else or another character or something, or hearing a story that resonates with you. I think there's a huge power in storytelling. It's why I'm still doing it, because I do think that there's a lot of good that can be done with our industry and what we do.
And I can speak for myself and some other people from the community, but we're glad that you've chosen to stay with us a little bit longer and use your talent in this narrative way and to get that help across to people.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm here. We've got a house here now, a dog, like real bricks and mortar. We moved back in February, my partner and I, and so happy to be back in the community full time, because, I lived in Toronto for the better part of a decade, but I was always coming back. There was always some excuse that I would have to come back, and I was making most of my creative work, all of my creative work here. The story is about here. And at one point it's why am I paying exorbitant rent in Toronto? And there is a disconnection. If you're not actually on P.E.I, it's hard to be part of the fabric of the film community. So no, I'm thrilled to be back.
We're glad to have you. Now, overall, I know there's different styles, but what would you say resonates with you the most in terms of directing? Which style would you say you lean towards, if you could pick one?
Yeah, I'm a less technical director. I've worked with a lot of really incredible technical directors who can really visualize every single shot. They see the movie before they even get on set. It's all sort of broken out. My prep is way more emotional. It's really rooted in feeling and what I need the audience to feel at various points of the script. So I don't come at, it's funny because it's a visual medium, but I really do come at it from an emotional vantage point. So when I am constructing shots and I'm trying to think about how to approach the edit, I'm often thinking what do I need the audience to be feeling, and what's the best way to compose this shot so that I can achieve that. So in the case of Not My Brother, for instance, it was a short film about a sister who's trying to get health care for her brother, who's been having these struggles consistently and not being heard and being ignored. So there's a turning point in the film where she makes a decision to lie in order to get that health, to get that care. And so in the moment, she's talking to a police officer. But I didn't want the audience to focus on the police officer. I wanted the audience to focus on this sister who's at her wit's end, and she's making this decision. And so the camera stays with her on her face the whole time, and you just see a shoulder here and there of the police officer, but otherwise you're with her. And so when, for me, that felt like the most effective way to tell that story. And I think... so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, whenever I'm approaching a film, I'm trying to think of what I need the audience to get emotionally in order for them to follow the story.
And I think when you take away all the pretty Hollywood production, the lights, the visuals, what's left is usually the narrative and the story, and having that emotional piece is something that people can connect with. So thank you for sharing.
I also am I almost swore, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but I'm a really terrible artist. So storyboarding was never a thing, because they would look like little stick people in boxes. So shot listing is really important to me. Okay. And then what I'll do is I will sort of make floor plans. Okay. And this is something that I shadowed a couple of directors and found out that this is this really cool way to, lay out the set and and you can just use arrows so you don't have to draw things. And so I find that tool, so practically shot listing and then using floor plans is a really tangible way for me to see and communicate with the team of what I'm going for in each scene.
It's great. Thank you for the insight, because it's good to know that you could be a very technical person, or there's other ways to get like your vision or your dream across, and it's nice for our audience to watch, to kind of see how that process is for you, and how they can kind of make that process seem fit for them as well.
Yeah, very early on, I realized that my brain is not super technical. Like I understand that it's a really big part of my industry, so I do my best to learn. But it's why I love the collaborative aspect of filmmaking so much, because I learned, like, I will never be a sound person, or I will never be able to run a camera on my own, but I so admire and respect and need the people that are experts in those areas and departments, and understand that they speak a language that I really need to interface with. So I absolutely love the collaborative aspect of filmmaking, because I couldn't do it without everyone else and all of their skills together. So early on I realized, like, oh no, I have very specific gifts. Like I can manage and schedule, and I do know how to tell a story, and I do know how to sort of speak with actors. But in terms of the higher technical aspect, I rely on my teammates to do that.
And I've heard the slogan, it takes a community to build a film.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that really is a really true statement.
And it's so cool, because you really have an opportunity in film to work with every single artistic community. Like, we're working with musicians, we're working with dancers, we're working with makeup artists, and so it's such a cool opportunity that we have to bring in an entire arts community, not just a film community.
Awesome. Yeah. What's one of your favorite moments in your directing filmography? I know that may be a loaded question, and you can take a half a second.
Yeah, take a half a second.
And you can describe, like, how did it turn out?
Oh man.
And I know you said you were very technical, but if emotion is a good way to kind of describe that.
Actually, I did this documentary series about the Western P.E.I.
Yeah.
And it was about we ended up doing 2 seasons of it. So it was like 12 people from Western P.E.I. and spending some time with them and getting insight into their lives. And one day we were profiling this oyster farmer named Leslie Hardy.
Okay.
And he runs a company called Hardy and Sons in Tyne Valley. And we spent the entire day tonging for oysters and talking to him and talking to his 8 grandchildren. And there was this one point where I was sitting at the back of the dory, and this guy who had been tonging for like a half an hour was like, "You want to try?" I was like, "Sure, I'll try." And I get to the front of the boat and I try, and this thing that he made look so effortless. I almost like capsized the boat with my camera woman at the back of the boat with a very expensive camera. But it was so cool to be like, oh wow, like this is it just like the power of watching someone who does this every day and actually getting that insight that my camera wasn't even getting, like just the physical experience of it. And then I sat back down a little embarrassed, and this other oyster boat came by and he said, "Put it in your hand," and I put it in my hand, and he put this little shell that was the size of my pinky nail, and he said, "This is a baby oyster." And I don't know, it was just a really cool day. And again, like this is why I love what we do, and this is why I love documentary as well. I don't make documentary as much right now because I'm doing a lot of fiction, but just like entering someone else's life for a period of time and being totally immersed in it is really cool. I guess that's what I miss about acting, is you put on somebody's skin for a while. And so I think documentary gives us that opportunity that you can just enter someone's world.
And it sounds like there's a piece of humanity that you get to experience when you get to learn about people's lives and what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And for our audience that doesn't know, what's tonguing?
Oh yeah, I know.
'Cause I don't
was
know
like,
what that is.
no, it's like the process of digging up the oysters from. I think this is. Oh my gosh, people are gonna judge me, but I think it's wild oyster farming. So they're not necessarily cultivated.
Like in a sock.
And you're actually like digging them up. They look like salad tongs, and you scoop them up and
Wow.
you take them and put them in the crates that are at the back.
Okay.
So we went out with about 12 crates that are balanced at the back of this little dory, and then we come back and they're all full of oysters that you're like just picking up off the ground of the ocean. The bay.
P.E.I. is home to a lot of unique people and unique industries, and it's so cool to learn really in depth about what they do.
Yeah, I'm sorry if anyone knows way more than me.
No, that's good.
It's been a few years. It's
good. Good. What can you tell us about your feature film?
Yeah, so it's tentatively titled B Unit, and it's based on my experiences being a unit production manager. And a unit production manager can mean a couple of different things in the union world, but for me, what I was kind of like a fixer. There was a production that was shooting in a different province, and they were planning to come to P.E.I. to pick up some shots, and so they hired me as the local production manager. And it was always so funny because even though I would try to manage expectations to say, like at the time we had a modest film rebate program, but our industry is small, and so I was trying to tell them like mitigate expectations, but they would always arrive with expectations of like, where's the trail, where are the trailers, where is this, where is that, so what my takeaway was always like, the experience would always start in fear of like, what is going to happen when these people arrive? But then the local team here that I would be able to work with was so amazing that we would always pull off these miracles. We would always over deliver. So the movie that I'm making is sort of a comic compilation of all of those experiences. So it's about a young woman who moves back from the big city to her small town. Not automatic. And she's got big hopes of creating a film industry in her town, and it's over the course of one of these productions. She manages to lure a Hollywood production to shoot on P.E.I. in her small town, and so it's kind of got like Devil Wears Prada vibes. It's got a lot of State and Maine vibes. I don't know if you remember that movie, but it was early 2000s. So I think it'll be fun. It'll be my first comedy. I usually tend to the melodrama, but this is going to be flexing those comedic muscles. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, the feature film that I am producing.
Yes.
So I'll take this moment to plug our new company that I'm recently have started with.
Please
Jason
do.
R. Snow,
Yes.
who's a filmmaker on P.E.I., who's been making a ton of work for the past 15 years, and Jeremy Larder. The three of us have collaborated a ton over the past decade or more. And so in the last year, a year and a half, I guess, we've decided to start. I mean, Jason and I have been actively developing projects together, but then, Jeremy and Jason and I started working together and developing things together. And thankfully, we've received some funding to keep those stories going. And one of those projects is called Who's Your Father? It's Jeremy's. Jeremy will direct it, and he wrote it, and it's this really funny sort of neo-noir comedy about a private investigator on P.E.I. Who starts to get in over his head when he's pursuing some black market lobster shady business. So we got Jeremy developed it through Telefilm. And we have recently got telefilm financing to make it. So we'll go to production summer of 2022.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Wow.
yes.
Who's your father? That sounds like a ubiquitous P.E.I.ism saying.
Exactly.
And I think it bodes well with the story that you've just described. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really funny. Jeremy just really knows the community that he's where the story is set, and I think I think people are really going to like it. Yeah.
What has your experience on the production end of filmmaking been like?
Yeah, so my experience, as soon as I graduated from school, I started working in production coordination. Okay. I was a production coordinator for a while. I was a script supervisor. I worked in lifestyle and culinary. I worked for Chef Michael's Kitchen.
Oh.
That's actually where I met Adam Perry, who directed Chef Michael's Kitchen, and then 10 years later, Jason and I are producing his feature. But on that, I was a production coordinator. So I started out in coordination, and then ended up doing production management, and then I started producing from then. So it's been very much the logistical planning end of things. I was a script supervisor for a while, so working in continuity, and a first assistant director. But I would say, like, above and beyond, I've been a production manager mostly.
P.E.I. really is a small place.
Yeah.
And it's funny how it's just things come full circle.
Exactly. Yeah.
How's your experience in producing informed your directing?
Yeah, great question. I think it's informed it hugely. Like, I am really hard on myself as a director and a writer, and I think as a producer, it's really important to cultivate and protect your director and writer. And so that's a big part of my job, is to make sure that that you are, as a producer, allowing your director and writer to tell the story that they need to tell, and to protect their vision. And there's lots of other roles for the producer, but I think at the end of the day, that you're understanding that the reason that everyone is spending all this money and all this time is to tell the story that the director wants to tell. And so I think that one of the biggest things that producing has offered me as a director is compassion for myself. Awesome. To say, either I need to provide that protection to myself, or that that compassion, or find a producer who will allow me to tell a story. But I think that has helped a lot. I also think that I've learned to write for the budget that I have because of being a producer, and not in a restrictive way, but I think understanding your limits can actually allow you to create really great art. Like, you can work within the structure that's afforded you, and it's a nice challenge. So that's one thing that I have, that being a producer has allowed me as a director to think about that. But to be honest, I haven't had a lot of time to direct in the last few years because the producing sides of things is going really well, and I'm loving the stories that we're telling, and
Awesome.
and I love doing that work. But I am excited to get back in the director's chair soon. Yeah.
And from your previous productions, we are too. Jenna, I think we've hit our time limit for today. I'd like to say thank you again for joining us on Mastershot. We really appreciate the time you've spent with us, and a little bit of the insight in your stories. And I'd like to give you this award.
Hey! How cool.
Lifetime Achievement Award, Jenna MacMillan.
Thank
Here
you.
you are.
That was very nice. I'm very honored.
Thank you, Jenna.